Hey darlings. Elena Alexandrovna was very worried about the future of her only son Anton. Thoughts were in vain. The young man was barely 30 years old and still had a lot to live, and he spent his best years near the bed of his dying wife. And don't tell him anything, just wave off. Well, yes, love, but when was it? How can you love a semi-living woman? Elena was very upset, remembering his poor fate. And her grandchildren were already dreaming of nyanching, and looking at the bride, she understood that it would not be soon. If they ever have a chance to have a chance. Svetlana can still lie in the state of vegetables for a long time. And that fool does not leave her for a minute, taking care of her better than a professional chair. How can a bed not be bought on the control panel? So some sterilizers are not cheap at all. As if the bride does not care which bed to lie on, and what plates there are. The whole house was stinking with that medicine. Elena Alexandrovna can no longer stay in it for a long time, suffocates, begins to feel sick. When Anton got married, Elena Alexandrovna was happy with his choice. Yes, she got a good bride. Polite, tried to please everything with her blood, and beautiful. She cut herself short, though. Elena did not like such boy haircuts from women. But what can you do? Fashion. She said once that it would not interfere with the branch to grow a little hair. Look how thick and beautiful she has. Why cut such beauty? But the son said that his wife's work is like that. Long hair and dress are not suitable at all. She waved her hand. Don't over-convince this foolish youth. A woman should be a woman in any situation. And what is this? Boy with a boy. From behind you won't understand who is in front of you, a man or a woman, in sneakers or sports pants, and even the haircut is not feminine. At all. Svetlana and Antashka loved each other very much, faithfully. Elena could not be happy that her son's everything was fine in the family. Young people walked behind each other like a thread behind a needle, even behind a loaf of bread in a store. And then only two of them holding hands. But it was when it was. What is there to live with now? The heart was covered with blood when it looked at its son. He noticed everything in her motherly gaze, and the gray on the temples, and the first wrinkles around the eyes, and the bags under the eyes, and the tired, exhausted gaze. He was told several times about his bitter fate, that it was hard for him. Why such abuse? He is young. He should think about himself. And the bride is not a maid. Let him give Svetlana to a special institution. There is professional care. There they will look after her until the end. He needs to think about his future, not to change the diapers of the sick wife forever. And he was waving off everything from her, once even shouted. How can she talk about his world like that? He will never give up on her, no matter what she is. Mother doesn't like to see him suffering. Let him not walk. Let his soul not be guarded by his preaches. They were happy, very happy. Young, beautiful couple Anton and Svetlana. All friends envied them and were dealing in relationships. Thoughts were small, but young people in 3 years of family life never quarreled. Even because of the emptiness. They got married, barely meeting for half a year. Already at the first meeting, they realized that they were created for each other. But the unfortunate coincidence divided their lives into before and after. Anton often then recalled that accident on the pedestrian crossing, tried to blame himself, thought, no matter how it was, they should have passed there a little earlier or later. Or maybe it was necessary to give up going to the store at all. Would be satisfied for dinner with what they have. But, as they say, if you knew where you would fall, you would lay a straw. How did Anton know that when they would cross the road on the green light, the brakes would not work when they approached the intersection of the car, and it would crash into pedestrians on full speed? Then 2 people died, a young woman and a boy aged 5 walking in front of them. Doctors then collected her in pieces. But a little confused Anton received only minor injuries, a couple of bruises and ligament stretching. And then, as a result of the fall, the car barely hooked him. The young woman spent almost a year in the hospital. She went through several surgeries. First, she was restored in pieces, then they tried to return the sensitivity to limbs. But the spine injury was too serious. And so, 7 months later, Anton was told they did what they could. There is no point in further surgery. The heart may not stand it. They offered to take Svetlana home. He was so afraid of this moment, he hoped that the doctors would not stop fighting for his wife. But insisting on continuing treatment was pointless. No one wanted to take such responsibility. He was left hoping only for himself. Doctors warned that his wife's emotional state affects recovery no less than surgery. The days of rehabilitation began. He hired a masseur, searched the city for the best rehabilitation specialist. He changed the office to a home office so as not to leave the patient without a lookout for a minute. It's good that his work allowed it. He sat for hours with his laptop in a deep chair near his wife's bed, sometimes even sleeping on it. He was away from home only for food and to the pharmacy. He learned to cook, and he even liked it. Only Sveta could not appreciate his culinary abilities and dignity. Her strength was not enough even for a conversation. A few months passed. Nothing changed in Svetlana's condition. Anton tried everything he heard in his ear. Needle pruning, all kinds of massages, some new drugs, endless drips. His hands were already down. Waving his hand at all this useless medicine, the young man continued to look after his wife. He had a day scheduled for up to a minute. After all, caring for a paralyzed person took a lot of time and effort, and he still had to work. Sometimes his mother visited him, and then he had to leave the rhythm he had started and 100 times assure her that he would not leave his wife. Let him not hope. And Elena Alexandrovna did not care. No, to somehow support her son. She only saw him endlessly and insisted on obedience. Once, when she entered Svetlana's room, she said everything she thought. Because of her, the deck is motionless, and her child suffers. Why? Why won't she die? Won't leave them alone? Yes, she suffered. But why ruin the life of another person? Once, the mother-in-law even thought about the bad guys. Should we cover the sick person with a pillow? But she caught up in time, realizing that such an unfortunate case would not end. The pillow could not fall on Svetlana herself, and the sick woman would not turn over in any way to suffocate face down. But since then, Elena did not leave any hope to come up with a more natural way to send the bride to that world faster. Everything was in one place. He even got lost in time. Forgetting that spring had come, he sat down on the bench, took a deep breath of fresh air. He looked around. How beautiful it was around. Clean, not yet dusty greenery, the piercing sun. Not as hot as in summer, blue sky without a single cloud, warm air. And the maddening crack of all kinds of bird brotherhood among the branches on the trees. This shrieking and shrieking seemed to him the most beautiful music in the world. The yard was filled with people. The elderly sat on the benches, warmed themselves in the rays of the sun, and talked about something quietly. The teenagers with bicycles emotionally argued about something near the gym. The babies were riding in the sandbox. But why is fate so cruel to him? He looked at the clock. He has a few minutes of free time. Then his wife will wake up. It will be necessary to start the everyday routine. He put his face in the warm sun, closed his eyes, enjoying the pink light penetrating through the century. I didn't want to go anywhere. I would sit like this until infinity. Suddenly I heard a woman's voice above my head. I opened my eyes, but I could not see the speaker because of the sun. A fragile silhouette in the rays of the sun, probably a teenager. I nodded and closed my eyes again, trying to return to my meditation. But the girl did not want to leave him alone. She sat next to me, shuddered. You see, I recently moved into this house. I don't know anyone yet. I live in that entrance. He was too lazy to open his eyes to see what kind of entrance she was showing. And it doesn't matter. And the interlocutor continued on. without caring whether he was looking or not. I don't have any friends here. In her voice, sadness was heard. Where I lived, we were friends with the entrances. We spent time together. We decorated our yard together. We often visited each other. Just for tea. And how are you here? You are friends with your neighbors? What can I say to this girl? That he has no time to be friends with anyone? That he has no time to plant flowers on the flower beds and go to the neighbors for tea? But he only kept silent. He did not want to be honest with a stranger. He sighed deeply. But where did she come from on his head, this piglet? Young, very young, probably just finished school. Pretty, long black hair, shining in the sun, beautiful smile, blue lips, stylish sun-protected glasses. She noticed that she was finally noticed, decidedly stretched out her narrow palm and introduced herself. Julia. Anton. He suddenly wanted to stay and talk to her. He suddenly thought that he had already forgotten how a healthy woman looks, how attractive she can be, how beautiful her movements can be, how pleasant her voice is, how great her scent can be, not with medicines, but with spirits. He looked at the girl, listening to her voice. He nodded towards his entrance. Julia said, "Strange. The neighbors never met. Let's go visit each other." Anton did not know what to say to his random friend. He did not want to tell that his house was home to a paralyzed wife. What guests can we talk about? While he was thinking what to answer the girl, a familiar voice was heard behind his back. "Son." Elena Alexandrovna noticed the son from afar, with a bright jacket, but did not rush to come. She liked what she saw. Young pretty girl next to her son. They are talking. He is not in a hurry to go home. The woman would have stood longer, but the bag was too heavy in her hand. "Mom, hello, are you coming to me?" The young man got up to take the bag from his mother, but she took his hand off. "Yes, I'm coming to you. Fruits brought a little." "No, you sit. Give me the keys. I'll handle it myself. Have a rest a little." Anton did not know how to be. I wanted to talk to Julia a little more, but also to let my mother go alone to the house was also not an option. He knew how she was negative about Svetlana. She will still say something bad to her. He looked at the clock. His wife still has to sleep. Having made the decision, he gave the keys to his mother, once again clarifying whether she could handle the bag. Elena Alexandrovna simply silently turned around and headed to the entrance. The apartment with her son was met by her specific smell of medicine. At least put on a gas mask on the threshold, she thought. She was upset again. Well, how can you ruin your life in such conditions? Anton will soon smell this medicine himself. Having taken off her shoes, she went into the kitchen. There was chaos. The dishes were in the sink, the crumbs on the table and on the floor near it. Having taken out the brought food, the woman took up cleaning. She didn't want to go to Svetlana's room. She decided that she would come later, when she would be in charge of the kitchen. She washed the dishes, wiped the table, washed the dishes. She looked into the refrigerator. There was only soup in the pot. She sighed. Is this food for men? Anton eats only what he cooks for his wife. She took out the meat from the freezer, put it in the sink to defrost. I need to cook something more substantial for my son. There were vases with flowers on the windowsill. Once they were gorgeous copies of room plants. Svetlana loved them very much, took care of them, even talked to them like with people. Now they, forgotten by everyone, presented a pathetic sight. Elena Alexandrovna moved all the vases to the kitchen table. She began to consider who else could be saved, and who the road to the garbage bucket, and how she never paid attention to them before. It would be better to take them away. She always looked at them with envy, knew their price, and yelled at the bride that such money was throwing away everything on them. But she only laughed then. This is her money, and she has to decide where to spend it. Having sorted out the flowers, she headed to the bedroom of the bride. She looked inside, slightly opening the door. And suddenly she died. With hope, she thought, seeing an immobile young woman with her eyes closed. She went in. Svetlana heard the creaking of the door, opened her eyes. Seeing an unpleasant grumble on the face of her in-law, she looked around the room. There was almost sterile purity. Well, yes, Elena thought. The kitchen does not reach the hands. All the forces go to the ring. What? Still alive? Displeased turned to the lying woman. And what a living thing. You still going to do that? Breathe faster. Hearing the bell at the door, she went out, especially knocking the door in the bedroom stronger. How did she get this ring? Everything is cleaned. The dishes are washed in the kitchen. Something smells delicious. Yulia's conversation seemed to have added to his life. He was ready to start his troubles with new strength. He kissed his mother in the cheek as a sign of gratitude for help, went to his wife. He asked if she wanted to come to her. She looked, her eyes closed. She must be sleeping, Elena answered. He opened the door, looked. He was looking at him with full pain in his eyes. If he knew what the sick woman wanted to tell him, he would have come closer, sat on the edge of the bed, took her hand. She is so lifeless, with pale translucent skin, bare-faced as an old woman. He remembered Yulia's palm, hot, with a supple skin, beautiful manicure. He sighed deeply and sadly. He suddenly saw a tear that flowed from Svetlana's eyes. He remembered. What? What's wrong with you? He was worried. Does it hurt? Where does it hurt? Only he did not wait for the answer, of course. And if a woman could speak, she would say that her soul hurts more than her body. Taking his wife home from the hospital, Anton asked the doctor what she could count on in her condition. Does she understand anything? How is her memory? Even if he remembers it, how is her brain? It can work in full. The doctor replied that he himself did not know to what extent she received the damage. He advised to develop a communication technique with the patient to talk so that she could answer yes or no. For this, it is not necessary to be able to speak. You can, for example, close your eyes. This is not. And to open is yes. Svetlana closed her eyes. Anton calmed down a little. I'll bring you some food now. Then we'll take the medicine and wash up. Turn on the TV. The girl closed her eyes. Okay, then. I'll be there soon. Don't miss me. Mom came there. It's uncomfortable to leave her alone. And Mom has already taken over the whole apartment. She took off the curtains in the living room and in the kitchen. Removed the carpet on the Anton, noticed that the flower vases on the windowsill had been reduced. Mom, what are you doing? He asked. How many times Elena Alexandrovna did not come to him? She had no business before her son lives. She never even asked. Maybe he needs help. She saw how difficult it was for him. He would have managed on his own if it weren't for work. His earnings depended on the number of work done. It would not have been possible to pay off. He needs a lot of money. The poor pension and the wife were not enough even for the Pampers. Elena did not answer anything to her son, but she will not tell him that she hopes that her son will continue to meet that girl, the neighbor, so that she would not be ashamed to bring her home. And Svetlana? And what is Svetlana? Let her lie down as she was lying, with vegetables, if she does not want to die. While Anton was driving in the wife's room, they called the door. Elena just turned off the heat and waited for her son to cover the table. She went out into the corridor, opened the door, and there was a beautiful brunette on the doorstep, 25 years old. Elena looked at the girl questionably, seeing her for the first time. Hello, I'm Ira, Sveta's friend. She introduced herself. Elena invited her to come in and said that she needed to wait a little. The bride she invited me to the kitchen, offered me some tea. No, thank you, but I would not refuse water. It's so hot today. It's the real spring already. Have you been friends with Sveta for a long time? Elena Alexandrovna asked, pouring water into a glass. We studied at school with her. We were not friends. We were just classmates. Sveta is very good. Many of her friends were getting drunk. She will help everyone, support everyone. What am I? I'm a little bit of AI. There were among her acquaintances people who would help me. Thanks to her, now I sit in front of you, alive and healthy. If it were my will, I would give half of my life to her to finally get up from that bed. Elena Alexandrovna listened to the girl and looked at her, not thinking that it was tactless and that he could be confused. She liked what she saw. Her eyes are green like emeralds. Here's her son, such a goddess. The idea came instantly. Tell me that everything would be done to facilitate the friendship of fate? I asked again. Irina nodded. One psychotherapist told me that Sveta has a chance to stand on her feet, but for this you need a psycho-emotional shock. They call it shock therapy. How is it? The girl didn't understand. Elena was happy. If she doesn't know what it is, she will believe everything she is told. She needs to be in a stressful situation, so that she is very scared, very upset. Then the body will attract all its hidden reserves, and the light will go to the right. Well, how can I help? Should I scare her? She couldn't understand what this woman was doing. No, don't be a crybaby. You have to pretend that you have a romance with Anton. It will upset her very much. You know her character. She will get angry and even very much try to do everything to stand on her feet. Prove that you shouldn't do this to her. We will achieve the desired result, I assure you. Ira thought about it. She didn't really like this idea. Can't we do it any other way? No, we have already tried all the methods. Nothing helps. It's neither better nor worse. Doctors say that if nothing has changed during this time, then there is no chance of recovery. I tell you, this is the only way to help her, which we have not tried. Please, help us put the flower on our feet. We have one hope for you. Well, I don't know. The girl was still doubtful. And what does Anton say about this? Yes, he is against it. He is too careful with her. Elena Alexandrovna decided not to admit that this idea had just come to her mind, and she was not going to devote her son to her plans. I knew his reaction. I want to ask you as a woman to a woman. After all, we are smarter men. We can do so that he does not know about our plot. As if that's what you need. Well, you understand what I mean, right? I looked into the girl's eyes. Elena couldn't be happier. Like, okay, she's doing fine. How smart she is. A brilliant idea. This fool turned around in time. So naive. Believes in shock therapy. Funny. She doesn't think that this therapy can have a reverse effect. After all, a weak body may not cope with stress. Her heart cannot take it. It would be perfect. They would bury Oleg and forget about her. Her son's hands will untie, and life will start anew. The main thing is that Irina agrees. Irina liked the idea of this woman less and less, but Sveta was very sorry. Suddenly her in-laws seemed to be right, and Irina refused to help. She realized that Elena was asking to seduce her son, and the woman thought, it's better to be friends with such a man. With such an enemy, you will quickly give your soul to God. Elena Alexandrovna continued her beliefs. She was excited with the idea and wanted to implement it at all costs. You won't have to work hard, believe me. He is a young, healthy man. Attention of such a beauty as you will not leave him indifferent. Irina did not have time to answer anything to the woman. Anton came to the kitchen. Seeing Ira, he smiled tiredly, said hello. That Sveta is resting and will soon fall asleep. If the girl wants to visit her, let her hurry. She, delighted that the conversation with his mother was not very pleasant, hurried to the bedroom. I noticed that nothing had changed after her last visit. Svetlana was still lying on the bed, looking at the ceiling, not even blinking. Ira greeted, bowed down to kiss her friend in the cheek. Her eyes met with her gaze. How much sadness and grief there was in them. Ira almost cried. No, she will help Sveta to stand on her feet, no matter how nasty her mother's idea of Anton was. The main thing now is to achieve the goal, and what methods, it doesn't matter. Let her friend forgive her. Then, when Sveta is healthy, Ira will tell what really happened. She would never betray her, if not for this illness. Ira sat on the table near the bed sick, took her by the hand. Cold, translucent brush without the slightest signs of life. I took it in both hands, as if I were trying to warm up with my warmth, share my life. Hello, friend. How are you here? I look at the heroes. Come on, get up. How long can you lie? You are a fighter with us, I know. And the guys have been waiting for you. They ask everything, whether their beloved Svetlana Nikolaevna will come out soon. She barely held back her tears. She kept silent so that her voice would not be heard. She just sat and squeezed her hands with her unmovable palm. She remembered how lively and cheerful she was once, Svetlana. She didn't sit at home for days. Always some trips, flights, competitions. Sveta was fond of sports orientation, alpinism. Even opened her own climbing gym. She was carrying her kids. She created a group for the poor and the orphans, so that all the children who dreamed of the mountains could train at her. She had a kind heart, although her character is sometimes harsh. Suddenly Irina caught herself thinking that she was thinking about her friend in the past. Why was it? Here she is, alive, lying in front of me. Not everything is lost yet. I will help. You, Sveta. I will definitely help, even if you don't want to see me later. Noticing that her friend is no longer opening her eyes, she probably fell asleep. Ira carefully put her hand down and quietly left the bedroom. She entered the kitchen. There was only Anton there. He said that Mom had already left because it was late, but ordered him to feed the guest. She got hot, gorgeous. So my hands. Sit down at the table. I can't obey Mom. Sorry. He will ask, did I treat you? I can't lie. She sees me through. Laughing, said Anton, pouring in the plate aromatic hot. Ira was not hungry, but thought that this was a good chance to fulfill the request of Elena Alexandrovna. Looking at the plate, she said that such food would be wine. The owner smiled. He clearly liked what was happening. He took out the bottle from the refrigerator. She had been waiting for her hour for several months. Well, don't stand there forever. Why not open it? They ate hot food, drank wine, and talked quietly so that Svetlana wouldn't hear them. Ira asked how the girl was doing, if there was any progress in her recovery. Anton said that, unfortunately, nothing can please her. Looking at the clock, the girl said that, "Oh, it's so late." She hurried home. Anton didn't want to let go of this young, beautiful woman. The barely recognizable smell of her perfume drove him crazy. He seemed to have breathed fresh air and realized that he had not breathed before that time. He had not breathed for many months. Drinking wine, it woke up a man in him who missed the female affection so much. Helping Irina put on a jacket, he felt the scent of her perfume stronger, looked at her neck, the messy strands of hair that came out of the hairstyle. He couldn't hold back, hugged him tightly. She didn't jump back, didn't start to swear, didn't try to hit him. She turned to him and kissed his lips. Anton understood everything. He quickly put on his jacket, turned off the light, and left the apartment with the girl. And Elena Alexandrovna that evening early got to sleep, tired from the work done. But the dream did not go away. She turned in bed for a long time, remembering and analyzing everything that happened during the day. If Ira listens to me, she thought, then first of all it will be necessary to take care of Svetlana. The apartment will need to be freed from her presence for a new family. It would seem that not a single healthy woman would refuse. And if Irina finds out better, she will definitely want to create a family with him. The woman has already made plans in which shelter she will assign to her colleague, what she will do for the renovation, and what kind of money she will give them. The smell of medicine will have to be taken out for a long time, she sighed. Svetka added her worries. I thought who I could ask for help in the search for these masters. I didn't want to contact them by chance, more relying on the radio than on the newspaper ad. Anton returned home only in the morning. Svetlana was already waiting for him. She got used to the regime and, without seeing the time when her husband entered the bedroom, she was worried. Anton didn't come to her right away. He was no longer interested in anything related to his wife. She didn't need to take any medicine, nor did she feel hungry, and she didn't mind having her hygiene procedures done after the night. He was already in a different life, next to a healthy, beautiful, and so passionate girl. He packed his things, documents, looked around, didn't forget anything. He put his bag with things near the door and only then went into the bedroom. The light was as always looking around the ceiling. She turned her eyes to his side, tried to smile. This grimace, which does not look like a smile, always scared him. But before he was calm about her. Now his face is curved from disgust. He realized that he could not stay with the patient for a second. How I'm tired of all this, he thought, looking at the poor girl. She, looking at him in the face, probably understood something, because tears flowed from her eyes. But Anton was no longer concerned. He said, Sveta, forgive me, but I can't do it anymore. I'm going to another woman. She looked at him with her eyes wide open. You have to forgive me. You love me, don't you? Understand, I'm a healthy man. I can't do it anymore. He exhaled. Don't worry, you won't be alone. I've already called a seat and social services for you. She will stay with you until Mom finds a good private boarding school. She promised me that she would take care of it. You will be better there. He tried to convince himself more than Svetlana, but so far it didn't work. But I'm not a professional. How do you not understand? Maybe because of my wrong care. You still can't move? It would be easier for him to leave. The young woman could only close her eyes and cry. She didn't want to see him. She didn't want to hear either, but she couldn't close her eyes. It was hard for her to listen to him. Let him go already. They called the door. Anton was forced to leave and never came back. Having let the seat into the apartment, he leaped towards the bedroom, took the bag he had prepared, and left. Svetlana had a new step in life. A life where there was no one to count on. Elena Alexandrovna quickly panicked, and just a few days after Anton left the house, Sveta was in a boarding house. It was not a private, expensive boarding house that she was promised. Rather, an ordinary. She began to slowly get used to the regime of the godmother, to the tasteless food, to the indifferent staff, to the stupidity of the manipulative sisters who had cut her all her hands off. She lay on the edge of the day, silently watching the cracks in the long-lost repair of the ceiling, and dreamed of death. She had no reason to live on. I wonder who remembered it? Irina scolded herself for what the light is. Well, how could she believe that nasty woman, Antoshkina's mother? She didn't like her offer at first. Refuse and that's it. And Anton is a good fellow. Kabalina is like that. Yes, he stayed that evening to spend the night with her, but the girl did not plan to continue with him. And he suddenly appeared in the evening, yes, with a bag of road, full of his things. Irina at first laughed at his rudeness, said that she didn't need it, that his mother asked him to help his sister-in-law to heal, that it was all a medical experiment, shock therapy. Only for Svetlana she was jealous of him. She drove him away, told his mother to go and sort things out. She didn't want to see them both. She didn't find a place for herself for several days. She rushed to her friend to repent, confessed to everything. Even called a taxi, called her driver's address. And near the entrance, her legs suddenly stoned. Couldn't go in. She turned around and left, defending herself for the young. Shame. Oh, how shameful it was to look at her friend in the eye. The same one almost pulled her out of the loop, helped her return to life. And she received such gratitude. In another attempt, again not having dared to go up to her friend's apartment, she sat on a bench near the entrance. Grandma was sitting there. Ira thought that these all-round old ladies knew everything about everyone. She looked at her eyes as if they were kind. She decided to ask, does she know what happened to the girl from 72nd? Is it the one lying there? Poor thing. Grandma knew Svetlana and her husband well. So Anton left her, went to the healthy one. Such a bastard. Probably his mom still slapped him son liberation. Not without her the family fell apart, and the girl was left alone. Grandma grumbled. Such a good girl helped me constantly. Either from the store will ask what to bring, or the deficit medicine will get. And you to them, daughter? So there is no one there. The apartment is empty. The girl was taken away on the ambulance. Seeing Irina's frightened eyes, she waved her hands. Yes, what did you think? She's alive. They took her somewhere in the shelter. She saw how Lenka, her in-laws, was bothering her here. They drove the medical car. Everything was guided. How to take it out and how to carry it. Migera. Suddenly she took Ira by the hand and spoke in a begging voice. I don't know who she is to you, but help her. She has no one close to her. She is very good. It's a pity if she is ruined. People like her should live and be happy. And you see how life has turned. Grandma took out the handkerchief and began to wipe her tears. I feel sorry for her. Oh, how sorry. Young girl, Adam and Jeru will be punished by God. Remember my word. And how does the earth bear it? Ira got up and left, and the grandmother cursed Elena Alexandrovna. Ira did not let the labor find out where they took Svetlana. Arriving at the address, she was horrified. Worse than an establishment, difficult to come up with. The old building, which had long demanded renovation, was barely visible from the abandoned garden. The path with cracked asphalt led to the central entrance. Inside the picture was the same. Cracked walls, a prehistoric parquet that cracked under the feet at every step, the glass that cracked in the windows. It won't be hot in this room in winter. Did Anton really agree to do this to his wife? He really is a bastard, a scum to his mother, thought Irina. We need to take our friend away from here immediately. Here he will bend down from the road, which is not to mention Svetlana. She was allowed to visit, but no one really cared where she was, who she was, what she was doing. A fat aunt in a saline medical dress, sleeping at the table at the end of the corridor, asked only who she was and called the room number. While Irina was looking through the numbers on the doors in search of the necessary room, she almost fell several times, clinging to the shoes, a burst, and an axe-like linoleum. She wanted to scream, loudly, in her voice, and throw herself at these dirty walls with cracked paint so that physical pain would at least suppress the soul. A little. It was because of her. Because of her insatiable stupidity, Svetka was in such conditions. It became a little easier for her to think that if it weren't for her, Elena would have found another girl. Anton told in the minutes of the revelation about some neighbor Yulka, which supposedly reminded him of normal life. But maybe Yulia would be smarter, or maybe vice versa. She would grab the man as a clasp and pull him out of the trap. Irina didn't need him. She drove him away. Let him suffer and repent like her, and not enjoy life with a young and healthy man, as planned. She went into the room, looked around. She didn't have to look for Svetlana. She was lying in a 4-bedroom room. It's easier, she thought. Probably she ate a little bit of blood out of her conscience, paid for it so that no one would come to her. Then, the thought that came to her mind almost knocked her down. Or maybe people here are like flies, and there is only one light in the room. The rest have already been taken out. They will not give relatives such a bummer. The place will always be empty. She came closer to the bed and her friends. She lay down, setting the cracked ceiling, and did not even look at Irina's side. The girl greeted. Svetlana closed her eyes, letting her know that she was not a pleasant visitor. Let her go. Ira took herself into her arms so as not to get angry. She thought that she had to drink something calming before the visit. She didn't think that it would be so hard. Svetlana, I need to talk to you. Please listen to me. She understood that even if the patient did not want to listen to her, she had nowhere to go, but still asked about it. Sveta, You know how I feel about you. I'll do everything for you, even go to a crime. But I'm stupid here, stupid. I can't forgive myself. I didn't need your Anton, and now I don't need him. I was with him only once. Your mother-in-law asked. Yes, can you imagine? She said that you need to try shock therapy to pull you out. What could be more traumatic for you than the betrayal of your husband? I was fed up with her old son's rat-sucking me. He said, you will learn, you will get angry, your body will be activated, some hormones will start to come out, which will help you get up on your feet. Smart words spoke, and so convincing that I believed her. And then I consulted with a familiar doctor. He laughed at me. He said that they had divorced me like a firstborn. That shock therapy has the opposite side of the medal. If you use it wrong, you can't bring a person back to life, but destroy them. But I was like a zombie back then. I wanted to help you so much. The tears flowed down the girl's cheeks. She no longer wiped them out. All her hands were wet. She looked at the light. She lay with her eyes open, carefully looking in her direction. Suddenly, Irina noticed something unusual through her tears. She still couldn't understand what attracted her attention, and the brain had already processed the information and gave it out. Sveta moved her little finger on her hand. This was barely a catchable movement, and it attracted Irina's attention. She was delighted, and she started hugging her friend. Fortunately, she didn't have the opportunity to resist. I'll get you out of here. You'll see. You will walk. Now I'm sure of it. She really didn't want to leave the sick one in such conditions. But she had to hurry. The sooner she solves all the problems, the sooner Svetlana will leave this terrible place. She kissed her cheek, promised several times that she would come tomorrow, and ran away. And Svetlana was left alone. She looked at the ceiling again, but he didn't seem so scary to her, not yet out on the street. Irina already called her friend doctor, who told her about shock therapy. Hi, Lisha. Remember I told you how I was deceived? Well, with a friend, as they said, that lying. Well, she just had. I will not tell in what condition she is. It is necessary to take her faster from there. But, most importantly, why am I calling? She saw how her little finger moved. Can you imagine? You once said that you have a colleague who is engaged in these cases, puts people on their feet. Some kind of a gym, remember? Irina patiently listened to what she was told and continued. Barely the man kept silent. Can he see Svetlana? Please agree. And also, tomorrow she needs to organize a move. How? Where? So far to me, and there will be seen. Nothing. I can handle it. You will help me if you need me to. Until the end of the story. A year passed. Anton was unable to return to the apartment where he used to be so happy with his beloved wife, and then betrayed her sick. He rented a small apartment in another suburb, and tried to communicate less with his mother. He blamed her for all his troubles. Elena didn't even know his new address. He had no personal life. Absolutely. For some reason, after Irina kicked him out, all women became uninterested and didn't need him. The only woman who made sense for him was Svetlana. She didn't give him rest. She came to sleep almost every night. At first he dreamed that she was dying because of his betrayal, that in the boarding school, where her mother decided that she is treated badly and she suffers from it. He was tortured with a bite of conscience. He asked his mother several times for the address of the medical institution where his wife was taken. But the woman stubbornly kept silent. She was offended by the lack of attention of her son. She wished him good, cared for him, and he was so ungrateful. Everything is not right for him. How well everything worked out. There are so many beautiful young girls around him. Every second one would not mind getting acquainted with such a handsome man. And he can't forget Sveta. Ungrateful. Anton was already tormented by nightmares. What kind of acquaintances can you talk about? He dreams of the same dream. As if he comes to his apartment, trying to put the key in the locked well. But the door with the creak begins to open itself. Not locked. He enters the half-darkness of the corridor, heads to the bedroom, to the door that is opened, which is knocked out by a thin strip of electric light. He goes to this light, but the door does not approach, but becomes further and further. He was already desperate to get to her, but suddenly the door turns out to be in front of him, spills out, and Anton sees a woman lying on the bed. He still does not know if she is light. The face is turned away from him, covered with strands of hair. Through them, pale to blue skin is seen. He stretches his hand, tries to remove his hair, and see who is lying on the bed of his wife. The woman suddenly turns her face to him with black eyes. She looks at him in silence. Anton wants to leave. He is scared, but his legs do not listen. He wants to at least remove his hand from her face, but his hand doesn't listen. He tries to drag her away with his other hand, trying not to look in the eyes of the woman, and suddenly she reacts to his movement. For a second, he looks at his hand in front of his face and drinks very sharp teeth into it. But there is no blood. There is only pain and fear. Anton screams and wakes up. After such a dream, he calls his mother again and asks for the address. He felt that his dreams would not stop until he met his wife. However, what wife? The caring mother was worried about this. She divorced her son with Sveta. The acquaintances and the rustling bill helped to settle the matter quickly and without any problems. Every time he asked her for the address of the boarding school again, she said that she called recently and was taking care of Svetlana's health. Why go there? To be upset? The patient doesn't recognize anyone at all, lies in the vegetable garden, constantly under the drips, because she can't eat anymore. It's even difficult for her to swallow. And they won't let him in. Who is he for her now? A stranger. Lately, mother and son have seen each other very rarely. Elena Alexandrovna has been begging Anton for several months to run to her at least for an hour. The pressure is rising. Here comes the son, comforts the sick mother. But Anton abruptly refused her, calls and stops with her. He has no time, works, and then suddenly came. She was first scared when she heard that someone was trying to open the entrance door with a key. She thought that the thieves. Then she remembered that she once gave the son the keys from her apartment. So, for all the fire, she didn't want to die of the stroke because she didn't have anyone to enter the apartment as a neighbor from the 10th apartment. If she had been in the hospital at the right time, she would still be sitting on the bench discussing with the passers-by. And because of her indecency and greed, she paid with her life. She was afraid that her daughter would be kicked out of the apartment by her son-in-law, so she didn't give her that key. When she felt that she was in a bad mood, she was strong enough to knock on the battery, to let people know that she needed help. She was heard, but how to help? Don't break the door. While the police called the investigator, while they tried to get into the apartment, she died. While the door was opening, Elena Sapasco looked out of the kitchen. Maybe it's not her son at all so late. So many months, even on the phone, he didn't talk much, and then suddenly came. But seeing the familiar silhouette, she breathed easily, went out into the corridor. Son, my good one, how glad I am. She began to speak and fell asleep. In front of her was a man, remotely resembling her son. Crumpled, long-lost hairdresser's hair, pale skin, gray bags under the eyes from endless lack of sleep, some strange shine in the eyes. She was even scared. Then she calmed down and decided that he just got sick. Again, her voice had her own notes. Oh my God, who do you look like? Why do you look like that? Are you sick? Get yourself in order immediately. Not a single decent girl will look at you like that. On the word girl, her son, who was standing in the middle of the corridor, suddenly shivered, looked into her eyes. Girl? What are you talking about, Mom? I'm going. She almost got into the loop of her conscience, because she was so mean to her friend. I see only you happy out of all of us. Right, Mom? Are you very happy? What have you achieved? That your only son is going crazy? Life has shortened me. I don't live now. I exist, he said and cried. She stood as if in a stupor, and Elena remembered. She read, stood up and grabbed him by the hand. She led him to the living room, put him on the couch. Well, listen, Sonny, I wanted it the best way I could. How much more would you suffer with her? I saw how you got tired, often didn't eat enough. I'm a mother. My heart hurt because of you. It would be better for her to be in the boarding school. And you didn't want to. How many times did I talk to you? So I decided to achieve my own personal goals. You should thank me, and you are making a fuss here. Mom, you are all about yourself. You didn't hear what I said?
I have nightmares, terrible nightmares.
I can't sleep. My heart is starting to hurt. Are you sure that this is exactly the happiness that you wanted without light? You just have to take yourself in your hands. Nothing terrible happened. Calm down. Sing a lullaby. I didn't take her to the dumpster. Why worry? She's in the hospital. Maybe she's not there anymore. She died. And you still reproach me. Forget it. It's been a long time. It's over. Mom, give me the address of the boarding house. I can't live if I don't see where she is and don't know what's wrong with her. If she even dies, it will be easier. Okay, I'll look for her now. Elena Alexandrovna decided to give her son the coordinates of the hospital where Svetlana was baked. I doubt she's still alive. Even if Anton doesn't like the place she chose, there will be no one to take anyone from there. In such conditions, and the more healthy patients did not survive long, which is already paralyzed to say. Having grabbed a piece of paper with the address, Anton headed out. For nothing, his mother tried to detain him, persuading him to have dinner with her. He had nothing else in this house. That night he spent surprisingly calmly. For the first time in the last few months he slept, and nightmares did not overcome him. He was more or less tired. He hoped that he would meet his wife at the boarding house. He tried not to remember how he was. He was convinced that maybe it was not necessary to take her home. He blamed himself for what had happened, but he had no desire to return to his previous life. He remembered how hard it was for him, how life passed by him. Look at him now from the outside. What better way to boast? But he thought that he would be free now. Only he would get rid of nightmares. When the taxi driver stopped the car in front of the rusty gate in the park, Anton asked if he had confused the address. The taxi driver was confused. No, he said, he brought it there. Don't worry. The passenger had nothing left to do but to pay and leave. He came to the gate, barely opened it. The rusty curtains did not want to give in, barely managed to cope with them. He headed along the broken path into the depths of the park. What was along the path in the park, of course, was difficult to name. Once there were planted trees in even rows, in front of them decorative bushes with a colored leaf. Once everyone took care of it. Now everything came to a halt. The grass grew. The trees grew unbecoming, gave a sprout. Turning the a couple of times, Anton touched the branch with his head, and they hurt their faces. Soon he saw the building and stopped in confusion. His sight was he came closer to read the inscription. It really was the hospital where Svetlana's mother sent him. Yes, he thought, a little surprised. Good private nursing home with all the amenities. Mom said she had been choosing it for a long time. To make it the best. Maybe she should be sent here for a couple of weeks. Let her enjoy what she considers the best. When he entered, Anton was no longer surprised by the wall, the linoleum, and the passageways. He approached the registration window. Where are the paralyzed people here? Asked. The sad aunt of an incomprehensible age got distracted from her trapeze and looked at an unexpected visitor. And why do you need it? How do you need it? I want to visit. I have a relative there. The surname. Anton called his surname. The woman began to read a small notebook, not even wiping her fingers. There were fat traces on the paper, but it did not bother her. No such thing, she said, and wanted to continue her lunch, but Anton did not calm down. How is it not? It should be. Look again. Then he got the idea that his mother could write down the surname of her girlfriend on the light. She then definitely planned to give them a name. Ant, after breathing out loud, walks around and can't eat normally, began to read the old notebook again. Yes, there is such. There was. She said. Inside, Anton was cold. He didn't have time to ask for forgiveness. She died. But Ant continued. She graduated. She graduated last year. Where did she graduate? She is not a walker. How could she graduate? I don't know that. Don't get involved with stupid things. And the angry girl slammed the window. But what kind of strange people are there? She thought, returning to the appetizing baked leg. Judging by the size, its owner was no less than a turkey. Anton tried to knock on the closed window, but in vain. The woman sitting behind him clearly adhered to the rule. When I eat, I'm deaf and I don't eat. We'll have to deal with the police. But it's okay. It's not that easy to get rid of him. He won't leave a stone. On a stone, but he'll find out where his wife is. Looking around and realizing that there's nothing on the first floor of the building that would interest him, he went up the stairs. The building was no less than 100 years old. On the railings, walls, and ceilings, the remains of former luxury were still visible. He thought that perhaps some princes or even countenances once lived here. This house was built for them. This garden is broken. The railing is so beautiful, with ornaments. There is even a coat of arms on the first floor. He looked so that he almost fell, getting his foot into the broken step. He thought that the masters would come here, and there is little money. He could have a museum here. What kind of hospital is there? And judging by the condition of the interior, here the homeless live their whole life. Once again, his mother remembered. Although he was a close friend, Anton was not going to endure this. Why did she do this? She was sorry for the money, but he was giving her a certain amount of money for the patient's treatment every month. Did not the money reach Svetlana? Oh, it did not. Mother did not even know that she was long gone there. And she told everything, that she called and recognized her. He was very upset. He felt like exchange coin for his mother. Doesn't she realize that he is not 5 years old, that he is an adult and can decide what and how is better for him? Oh, it's bad that parents don't choose. Oh, how bad. Walking down the second-floor corridor, I saw a door a little decent to the rest. There were no signs, but I decided to knock. If the chief was not there, then maybe someone more adequate than the aunt in the registration room, it seems. Without waiting for permission to enter, he opened the door. Maybe they didn't hear. It was the office, and there was no repair in it, unlike the corridor. Behind the table, behind the window, sat a man in a medical dress and a white cap. He wrote something in a thin notebook and did not pay attention to the newcomer. But he was not heard. Are you deaf? He thought and came to the table. Excuse me, please, he said a little louder. The man suddenly even jumped on the chair. When he raised his head, Anton saw a gray-haired old man with a snow-white beard. Maybe he really has a deaf ear. What age is he? He thought. Young man, what are you doing here? The old man squeaked like a gate in the garden. Anton tried to be polite. So far so good. I'm looking for my wife. I called her by her name. My mother put her in your clinic a year ago. And in the registration, they say that she graduated a long time ago. But how can this be? We didn't take her, and she has no relatives. I understand. I understand you. Now let's see. The doctor got up and put the seedlings in the closet, behind the glass of which there were when, say the patient, came to us? Anton called the exact month of last year. The doctor looked at the folders for a long time, finally pulled out one and headed back to the table. He began to scroll through the old slimy finger. Anton thought that the old man looked like a gnome. You just need to change your costume, and you will fly out to the gnome from the Snow White fairy tale. Which one of the 7? Thought and smiled. Your wife did go out. She stayed with us for only a few weeks, then she was taken away. Who took her away? How could you give her to a stranger? Well, he can be a stranger to you, and I know him well. An old man said with a grudge. Colleague is my. He puts your wife on his feet. Where can I find him? I will give you his phone number and address of the clinic. But you should not go to him right away, but first agree on the meeting. As far as I know, he is often abroad. He practices in several European clinics. Talented, the doctor finished with admiration. Anton left the hospital and breathed fresh air into his chest. The smell inside the building was unbearable. He reminded him of life a year ago, next to his sick wife. No, he decisively does not want to return anything. But maybe if some doctor took her away, then now everything is not so bad? When calling the doctor, Anton was delighted. He was in the city. He did not want to tell the reason for their meeting on the phone. He said that he needed consultation. Ivan Petrovich, so the doctor was called. He answered that he can only give him time for the next week. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Does he like it? Anton was happy with everything. It's a pity to wait so long. For some reason, I thought it was good that they had different surnames with Sveta now. The doctor did not ask unnecessary questions. What if he knows her so much that he remembered her surname? Ivan Petrovich was still trying to tell him something about some analyses and pictures. He put the phone down. On the appointed day, Anton came to the clinic a little earlier. He wanted to take a look around a little, suddenly see his wife. He understood that she was lying, and it was unlikely to be a walk in the park, but still. He noticed how this medical institution differs from the one where his mother baked Svetlana. The path to the central entrance is laid out with a decorative brick, the benches along it, neat, well-groomed trees. A bright facade without the slightest mistake, a bright sign at the high metal door. Why didn't the mother send Sveta here? After all, she assured him that she had been monitoring all the clinics for a long time. Did she really not read about this? And if the gnome of such a high opinion about the doctor that he accepts here, she should have come across his name. Anton realized that he was lied to all this time, and he believed this lie. It was just beneficial for him to believe everything that his mother would say. So calm and lazy. The door opened easily as if it were not made of metal. Anton went into the wide vestibule, shining with purity. A beautiful tile on the floor, a pleasant eye to the color of the walls, and huge, just incredible number of flowers. The flowers were on the windowsills, in huge rolls on the floor, and even on the walls some plants seemed familiar to him. Svetlana had such plants in that past life. He caught himself thinking that in everything that surrounds him, he is trying to find a similarity with his past life. Life before the accident. He came to the registration box. I had to wait a little. The young girl still could not understand the old visitor in which office he should go. He stood quietly watching her. I thought that it was probably the main requirement when he was hired. He also paid attention to the opposite sex, but more like an aesthete than a young man. There was no desire or strength to get acquainted. Young man, I'm listening to you. The voice of the registrar heard. He didn't even notice when the incomprehensible old man walked out of the window. Hello, I have a record for Ivan Petrovich for 3 hours. What is your name? Looked at the monitor. Yes, you are. Is this your first time here? In response, she continued, you need to enter your card. Your passport, please. And without it, you can't? Anton was not going to be treated. He just needed to ask about Svetlana. No, if you plan to continue treatment here, then the information about the initial examination is mandatory. How can you do without a card? The girl was surprised. She was just a child. Naive round eyes, black pencil, fluffy children's lips, long thin pigtails, braided with a "Do you have any paralyzed patients here?" The girl was surprised and threw her eyebrows. Why are you asking such questions? But she still answered. Yes, of course, we have different patients, but this is in the stationery, in another building. Here we are only consulting. I see, thank you. Anton realized that it would not work to walk through the corridors, looking into the ward, and he hoped so much that he would be able to find light and without the help of the doctor. He started looking for the right office. However, it was possible not to look at the numbers, because the queue was only for one, and it turned out to be 220. He sat on the bench in the distance, waiting for the nurse to call his name. He noticed the old man who was holding him near the registration office. He thought that if he would be ahead, he would have to wait until evening. He arranged himself more comfortably, leaned against the wall, and thought, what will he say to the doctor? It was necessary to start the conversation so that he would not be kicked out of the office right away. But what words to pick up? He was so immersed in thinking that he did not immediately hear his name. He looked around. The girl looked in his direction. His turn came. He rushed to the office, decided to be what he was going to be. What is he thinking? As he says, so it will be. And if the doctor does not want to talk to him, who will cause a scandal, but will achieve his goal? Ivan Petrovich turned out to be a rather young doctor, a little older than Anton in appearance. Interesting face, smart eyes, wide shoulders. He was very much in a medical suit. Anton thought that probably all the female staff in the clinic were in love with him. He noticed what eyes the assistant was looking at him. The doctor greeted, suggested a seat, took a card. You are here for the first time. I'm listening. Ivan Petrovich, you are sorry, of course, but I'm not sick. Your coordinates were given to me by your colleague from another medical institution and called the Godfather where he visited the day before. Well, what do you need from me if I don't care about you as a doctor? I was told that it was you who took one patient from that hospital a few months ago. The doctor looked interested in the visitor. Yes, there was a case. What do you care about that? You see, Svetlana is my wife. Seeing that after these words, Ivan's view changed and he didn't promise anything good, he hurried to continue. Yes, I understand that those conditions did not suit her, but this was what my mother was doing. She assured me that she had arranged Sveta for a good boarding school. Mom? The doctor was surprised. Are you a little child? Why is your mother taking care of your wife? Yours, you see? Don't you find this situation disgusting? How old are you? Mother's son. His eyes were so despised that Anton somehow snuck in, pulling his shoulders. Yes, he is really a mother's son, because it is so convenient for him that his mother takes most of his problems on herself. You don't understand. I'm tired. I'm a living person. I've been taking care of her for several months. You don't know how hard it is. Wishing to justify, he almost screamed. Of course, you're right. I don't know. The doctor smiled hard. How should I know? I have dozens of people like Svetlana, and I'm with them from morning to night. I have no idea how hard it is with them. Seeing that the nurse was frightened, she looked at them both and said, Vera, come out. You'll be in 5 minutes. He realized that the girl was not going to obey him and was sitting in place. Go get some coffee for me. When the assistant's door closed, he continued, How are you there? He looked at the card. Anton Alexeyevich, have you been thinking about her all the time? What does she feel? What is she thinking about? Did you and your mother think that betrayal could kill her? Or did you just wait for it? No, what are you talking about? How can you? I loved her, but it was very hard for me. Well, how can you not understand? No, I don't understand. I will never understand, because I see the dynamics of recovery of those who are supported by their relatives and those who dream of death only because of betrayal. He kept silent, tried to take himself in his hands. He understood that now he was saying everything in vain. It is not possible to change and convince such people as Anton and his mother. Okay, it's up to you. You live with it. What do you want from me? I would like to talk to Svetlana. He kept silent for a second. If she is still alive, why do you need her? As far as I understand, she is in the past for you. You didn't remember her for a whole year, and then suddenly, Anton decided not to hide anything. You see, Nightmares haunt me every night, and Sveta is present in these nightmares. I don't know what to do. I don't remember when I was normally sleeping. I thought that maybe if I saw her. Ivan didn't have time to answer Anton. Vera entered with a cup of coffee in her hand. Ivan Petrovich, your wife came there. She says you were waiting for her. Well, why didn't you let her in? Of course I'm waiting. Tell the patients who it is. Let them not be outraged. She's just for a minute. The girl opened the door. She called, Svetlana Nikolaevna, come in. She held the door in front of the young woman and left. I could hear her saying something as she was in a row. The young woman stopped at the door and then said, I thought you were alone here. I'm sorry. I can wait. Anton was shocked by the surprise. The voice seemed very familiar. He turned around and even pulled himself back, almost falling off the chair. His ex-wife was standing in front of him. Alive, completely healthy, beautiful woman. Her eyes regained their color. A rosy-haired man was playing on her cheeks. Once, her hair was dull from a disease, and now she had a shiny, thick hoof on her shoulders. Anton? Svetlana was surprised and threw her eyebrows. Yes, Anton, Ivan said, getting up from the table and approaching his wife. Sit down, please. He took her by the hand, put her on a chair. Anton suddenly noticed a change in her figure. Sveta was pregnant. He came to find out what was wrong with you, and he wanted to take revenge. He said that you were coming to him in nightmares. Sveta was still silently looking at her ex. Her whole past life, related to this man and his mother, flew through her head. Hello, Anton, she said. She didn't die, as you can see. To your and Elena Alexandrovna's regret. Don't say anything. I remember what your mother told me. I know how she deceived the trustworthy Irina. I will say that if you did not want to change me, nothing would have happened. I forgave this fool Urka. She saved me in the end. And I don't want to see you. I hope that now your mother is happy. It turned out the way she wanted. You have a young and healthy wife. That suits her, and that does not break your life. Maybe you have already got children? Sveta realized that the meeting with the former, whom she was so afraid of, was not at all traumatic for her, and she was happy about it. She was even grateful to Anton. His visit finally freed her from the past. Anton was silent. What can he say to this blooming young woman? That his life will not even envy the homeless? That his soul will soon be in such a hell that it will be time to turn to the psychiatrist? He realized that no one would understand him here, and he would not regret it. What forgiveness can you talk about? He silently stood up and left the office. And Ivan, having immediately forgotten about the visitor, rushed to his wife with kisses and inquiries. Well, tell me, don't be bored. Who? Sveta smiled, holding her paws. She loved to tease her husband. She really liked it when he asked for something impatiently as a boy. He was so cute and so beloved at that moment. And now the same story. In the morning she said she was going to the UZI and would already know the gender of the child. And Ivan is not there to wait until evening to hear at home who he will have. He asked her for a promise that he would immediately come to him with the news. The future mother solemnly took out the handbags folded in 2 sheets of paper and gave them to his wife. It was the first picture of their child. Let the black and white ones, made with the help of the UZI apparatus, but soon the colored ones will come. Only a few months left to wait. Ivan turned the leaf and hugged his light tightly from what he saw. The UZI man tried to be famous. He took a picture at such an angle that there could be no alternative. They will have a son.